Hello again, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd of the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. Kat is out on assignment in Madagascar, and the rest of our correspondence corner seems to have all caught the lurgy, so it's just me and Bryan today. So, Bryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right this time around. I was a little tired for a while. I had my own sort of work experience going on that could have drained a lot of my energy, but I'm here now for you.
You had a bit of a death march there, huh?
It wasn't necessarily more of a death march. It was more along the lines of, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on. Bryan, what?
Okay, alright, so yeah, it's just the two of us today, and we are going to be discussing Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, probably the most controversial geek movie to come out so far this year. Been a lot of argument back and forth before the film's release and since. So we're going to be taking a look at the film and seeing if it is a shining ray of hope in a dreary world, or if it's, just a dud. But of course, there is procedure to follow, so we're going to begin our show, as always, with Ask a Geek, and we got some questions here. First one here comes from Mark from the email, and it is for Bryan. And he asks, with the reveal of Spider-Man's costume in Civil War, what on-screen Spider-Man costume so far is your favorite?
I still want to go with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man costume, because it just looked great on screen. This one looks the closest to the comic book, though. At least in the head and the torso area. The arms and legs are a little sporty, and so I need to see it more in action before I can say, yes, this is absolutely my favorite one. But I really do like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man ones. The best so far. They were great. I didn't like Amazing Spider-Man 1s because I called it the giant tongue costume, where he had just the big red tongue in front of his suit. Amazing Spider-Man 2 actually was an improvement over that. They actually kind of gave him the belt and he looked more streamlined. But this one, everyone's sort of focusing on the Spider-Man eyes because they now have the emoji eyes that they have in the comics. So I want to see how that works out because it seemed to work out okay for Deadpool. So I might as well try it in Civil War.
Something that kind of occurred to me, since this is the Civil War line, do you think that the suit that he has in the film is going to have all the nifty little gadgets that the suit Spider-Man had in the comics during Civil War had, like the robotic arms and being able to take a bullet?
The Iron Spidey suit? God, I hope not. I don't know if I'm in the minority of this one, but I did not like how that suit looked. It didn't look like Spider-Man, honestly, now I know it says this is an Iron Man suit just for Spider-Man. I was like, okay, it makes sense, but it's still like the gold and the red and I have robotic arms now. I was like, what?
See, that's what I was asking. Not so much the look, but just like the extra features. Because if you listen, you can hear a mechanical whirring when the eyes focus.
And I mean, I don't want too many extra features. And what I don't want, what I absolutely do not want, I don't want it to be revealed that Tony made the suit. Because that takes away from Spider-Man. I feel like if Tony just gives him this stuff, it just doesn't feel right.
I just hope they don't do what thankfully none of the other suits have done so far and have that stupid armpit webbing under the arms. I always thought that was
the flying squirrel webbing.
Yeah, like even in the comics, I thought that was just dumb as hell.
Yeah, it really didn't serve any purpose whatsoever. I might have been a Todd McFarlane thing because I know he started it.
Oh no, that's been around since that was around at the beginning.
Well, he had it but the Todd one I felt like was more, I don't know, more noticeable when he did it. Maybe because he made him ragged looking.
Everything was more noticeable when Todd McFarlane drew it. Because that's the way Todd McFarlane draws. He starts and then he doesn't know when to stop.
Right.
Stan Lee's got to come and go, Todd, no, you need to stop. It's finished. Let it go. Walk away. It belongs to the ages. So, okay. Next question here, also from the email, comes from Charlie, and it is for me. And he asks, what long-forgotten video game character do I think deserves a comeback? And my immediate answer to any question of this type is always going to be Earthworm Jim. I remember growing up the Earthworm Jim video games. I remember the cartoon. I still have one of the Playmates action figures from way back in the day. Although the paint has started to come off, which kind of saddens me. But Earthworm Jim was, I think, one of the. I think the biggest problem with Earthworm Jim coming back now is he was very much a product of his time. You know, the 90s were a very experimental age. for video games, where you could get away with having sort of an off-the-wall cartoony protagonist like that. And nowadays, in this modern era of grim and dark modern war shooters, I don't think that I think Earthworm Jim would have a hard time finding an audience, except in the people who remember him from the past. But I'm always up for some more Earthworm Jim goodness, especially if it's a side-scrolling platformer. Please don't give us another 3D Mario 64-esque game like Earthworm Jim 3D. There was talk that they were going to remake Earthworm Jim for the PSP a few years ago, but that fell through. So the last time Earthworm Jim showed up was actually in an HD facelift version of the first game that they put out on Xbox Live, which I have, and it is awesome. But I'd really like to see Earthworm Jim come back from the island of misfit game characters.
I think it's funny you could sort of mention that he might not be able to find an audience. I feel like every time when something sort of, at least now, when something breaks the mold of the Call of Duties or Modern Warfare stuff, it seems to get more attention. I don't know if that equals sales, but it gets more attention.
Well, see, the thing is what made Earthworm Jim so memorable wasn't the gameplay of the games. I mean, the mechanics were polished to a sheen, but it was, at its heart, it was a bog standard platformer. What made Earthworm Jim so memorable was the sense of humor surrounding the game. And we're talking about a game about an earthworm who becomes a superhero because a radioactive supersuit falls on him from out of the sky. And in the first level, you catapult a cow into the stratosphere. I mean, this is the kind of whacked out humor that you saw everywhere in the 90s because that's what you had to do to distinguish yourself. And nowadays, I think Earthworm Jim would have a difficult time, standing out in the crowd now that we have so many different, styles of games and so many different, ways to play games nowadays. I think he'd have a very difficult time distinguishing himself with just that sense of humor nowadays.
Possibly.
And the third question here comes from Ray, and it also comes from the email, and he asks, Brian, there seems to be a dissonance between the DC movies and DC television. Shows like Arrow, The Flash, and Supergirl tend to get really good reviews and do really well, while the movies so far have been very subpar. Do you think this is a case of the two departments not coordinating like Marvel does with its films and movies?
A little bit of that. I know that the movies themselves are kind of done more with Warner Brothers. They sort of have way all like the control and final say over everything. So you've got to come a lot of executives and maybe people who don't understand the source material or the characters themselves sort of making the decisions. While somehow in some way a coup happened in the TV side and a bunch of the DC people snuck into it, going, all right, we're going to make our shows this way. And so you kind of see this weird opposite. But at the same time, I don't know, the comparison between the Marvel TV and the Marvel movies and DC TV and the DC movies is interesting, because the good example is you look at, the Marvel movies and how they're presented, and then you look at, say, their Netflix series, like Jessica Jones and Daredevil, super dark series. DC movies tend to be called, the dark, gritty, and stuff like that, and their shows are a bit more lighthearted, maybe except for Arrow. And then you kind of go, the Marvels, okay, their movies are a little bit lighthearted, but then you look at their Netflix TV shows and Jesus Christ! It's a weird thing that the world works in. I'm saying that a lot, especially because I finished up Daredevil Season 2, which I know I'm not going to say anything, spoilers, but there's some things happening in that season. I was just like, holy shit! Are we sure this takes place in the same universe as the Avengers?
That's something that I still haven't finished season 1 of Daredevil, but that's something that I kind of like about it, is that, it pays lip service to the fact that it's set in the same world, but it doesn't define itself by that. The only real references that I can think of to the greater Marvel universe is they just make this one throwaway reference to alien death and destruction, and then that's it.
That's pretty much it. You're like, oh, okay.
Speaking of Daredevil, we got a new question here. This one comes from Mary in the email, and this arrived just the other day. And she asked me what I think about the possibility of there's apparently an announcement made that they're thinking about doing a Punisher spinoff to Daredevil. And I had to say, I haven't seen Daredevil Season 2. So I can't speak to his chops as the Punisher, because as of right now, Thomas Jane is still the gold standard to me. But, if he does the character as well as I've heard, then I would be very excited to see a new Punisher series.
Though I have to correct that. Last I heard is that there has been no plans for a spinoff. But that doesn't mean they're not talking about it. But the last I heard, there's no official plans.
Yeah, the announcement that I read, there was no official plans, but they were kind of like, maybe it would be cool to do this. So, but yeah, I would be very excited for a Punisher spinoff. So anyway, that's all the Ask a Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in, and as always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. Or you can drop them on our Facebook page if you follow us there. We have a permanent Ask a Geek thread on our Facebook page, so we're always pulling questions from there as well. So, yeah, go ahead and get those questions in. We love hearing from you guys, and who knows, maybe your question will be read on the air. All right, and we're going to forego headlines and musical break this week to jump right into our discussion topic, which is Batman v Superman. Probably the maybe not the most anticipated geek movie of the year, but certainly the most talked about, aside from maybe Deadpool. I don't know, it might be tied with Deadpool for most talked about. But I can tell you there has been just a great split since this movie was released between the critics and the fans, and there's even been a split within the fans. It's become a very polarizing film. You either love it or you hate it, and there's been very little middle ground. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this film and see why that went down of the plot of Batman v Superman, as if for the 6 people out there who don't know this story.
Well, there's actually probably even more than that. The way to try to do the plot here is I'm going to try to break it up, because you kind of have... It's a very strangely put together film. So you sort of have what Batman's doing, what Superman is doing, what Lois Lane is doing, and what Lex Luthor is doing. And they try to sort of combine them in the third act. It doesn't quite work out. So what Superman is doing is that Superman, at this time, it's been a while since Man of Steel. He's doing his Superman thing. And he seems to have some sort of, as Clark Kent, some sort of issues with Batman, more of like civil liberties, and he doesn't like how things are going. And he's just, at this time, he's trying to just do what he can to be Superman. You see a few things of him like saving a person in Mexico, and then he's pulling his ship, and he saves a rocket from exploding. So you see him kind of in these very small snippets doing Superman stuff. Then you have Batman. The course of Batman's story is that it starts out like he doesn't really have anything to do with Superman. He's on his own little quest to get stuff done from the mobsters that are in Gotham that eventually leads him to LexCorp. But it turns out that's all a ruse. The one thing he was doing is to try to find this great chunk of kryptonite that was found in the Indian Ocean from the other ship from the Man of Steel. And he wants to get that kryptonite because he doesn't trust Superman for reasons we're not really sure about. Other than the fact that maybe he doesn't trust Superman because he saw what happened at the end of Man of Steel, and it's hard to trust a guy that just helped destroy a good portion of a city. Then you have Lois Lane, who kind of runs around trying to figure out this whole quote unquote conspiracy from the first part of the movie. The first see her in the desert trying to get an interview with a terrorist leader, but things go wrong. Guys start killing people, but Superman saves her.
By pile driving a terrorist through 6 walls.
What are you going to do? Then you have Lex's story. And this is even a little bit more confusing. So Lex's story is he's trying to hook up with the government because he's the one that found the big kryptonite. So he wants to be brought into the States. While he's being brought into the States, he also sort of convinces some of the government to let him into the crashed spaceship that's still in Metropolis at the moment to get, his hands on alien technology, Zod's body, for various reasons. You learn throughout that he's the one sort of manipulating Batman and Superman to get into a fight. And from all this information, he eventually creates Doomsday, leading to the big fight at the end. I guess I could throw in, and also Wonder Woman's there. So Wonder Woman's there, and Wonder Woman's there. We don't really know why she was there, but she had no, that's right. She was looking for a picture that Lex had stole. That's why she was there. But she's not on the screen a lot, but we'll get into that a little bit later. If this sounds disjointed and weird, it's because that's how the film kind of felt. It felt like, the best way I could describe it felt like trying to remember a dream. Because sometimes you don't remember all what happens in a dream, or what you say, what you do, or anything like that. You kind of remember parts of it. And everything about this film sort of reminds me of that. You're trying to follow a dream or anything. It just feels weird. It feels disjointed at places. There's stuff obviously missing.
and stuff that could have also have been cut, I feel. My biggest problem with the film, since we're moving on to our general thoughts, my biggest problem with the film is the fact that the motivations of the characters are either not explained, or the explanation that we are given is nonsensical. Like, we really have no idea why anybody is doing anything that they're doing in this film. Superman he's still kind of waffling around. Lex is looking to destroy Superman because, I don't know, he just doesn't like him or something, envy. Batman comes off as just needlessly paranoid. The line that really eclipses that is when he's talking to Alfred. He says, if there's even a 1% chance that this man could go rogue, we have to take it as an absolute certainty and destroy him. Which, wow, that escalated kind of quickly. But it was actually kind of funny. I actually took a date to see this movie. Probably not the best choice I ever made. But when we came out of the film, she was actually I was disappointed in the film, but I wasn't like riled up about it. But like, she was angrier about it than I was. So she goes on this epic tirade about, again, how the character's motivations aren't explained, and I'm just listening to this and I'm biting my tongue, trying not to laugh, because the thought that's going through my head is, wow, is this what everybody else heard when we did Pixels?
Right. Usually it's whenever you go on your rants is probably what you just heard. Like, so she just turned the image on you. Because I know whenever you're like, and we're going on a rant, I grab a helmet. I kind of go under my desk for a while. I'm like, okay, it's almost over. It's almost over.
She did kind of put a mirror up to me, but hey, that's why I like her. But like I said, I found it very hard to care about why anybody was doing anything in this film, because I didn't know why they were fucking doing it.
Yeah, that's the ambiguity of it, and that it doesn't completely bother me, but what's happening here, and this is where you get sort of some of the dissonance between critics and fans, is that because it's so ambiguous and you don't know a lot of stuff, fans, I've noticed, have been inserting reasons. They've been trying to find, not necessarily find reasons, but bringing up reasons, and a lot of the reasons come from the comic books.
So they're sort of filling in the gaps with what they know from the books.
Yeah, so they're and that's kind of cool, but the problem with it is that now we have a lot of different reasons for a lot of different interpretations, and the critics and critics who do know these characters just are basing this movie and their criticism of it just by what they saw. They're not adding into it or anything like that. They go, this is what we saw and we didn't like it. And that's where you're starting to get sort of a back and forth between them. Because like I said, like, it's a lot of dream sequences, a lot of very confusing items going on. You weren't sure exactly what was reality, what wasn't at times. Looking at the Kevin Costner scene, I'll admit though, that surprised me. I didn't expect Kevin Costner to come back. Spoilers. But divide is sort of happening. I don't know if that makes it a better film or not. That's up to whoever the interpretation you have.
Okay, so I guess since we've discussed the plot of the film, let's talk about the cast, and let's start with probably the one that everybody was really fired up about, and that's Ben Affleck as Batman. And here's where I have some nice things to say about the movie, is that given the material that he had to work with, I feel like Ben Affleck did really well.
I did like what he did, and if you remember when this news broke on our show, and if you don't remember, please go. I don't even remember what episode was talked about. Whenever the news broke, kind of look for the show in the same general area. Is I gave Ben the benefit of the doubt. Like, Ben had gone from a career in tumble and a career going nowhere to almost no career at all, and then completely turned it around to become an award-winning movie maker himself, a director and a writer. So I was like, all right, let's see what he can do. He's been humbled by Hollywood. He went from
Gigli to Argo.
Yeah. So at this point, I was like, let's just see what happens. And I liked what he did. I liked his Bruce Wayne. I liked his Batman. They didn't feel completely different, like some people do try to play him. It wasn't like the Christian Bale where, as I'm Bruce Wayne, I need to pretend I'm this this completely different person, and then I'm Batman. Here was like, I'm Bruce Wayne, and I'm also Batman. Like, it was sort of the same sort of character. A little bit more subtlety involved than Christian Bale's Batman, I felt.
You know what vibes I got from Ben Affleck, from Ben Affleck's Batman? I almost kind of had flashbacks to Kevin Conroy's Batman from the Justice League cartoon.
I mean, a little bit. Now, I know some people might get angry at that because the things that this Batman does, that Batman would never do. They are correct. But he at least seemed to be trying something a little bit different than his predecessors.
Well, let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, which is the collateral damage issue. Batman seems to be at the forefront of racking up the butcher's bill this time around. Most notably in the car chase scene where he's blowing up cars and flipping them over and driving through buildings without seeming a care in the world as to the collateral damage, which I thought was a little uncomfortable. I felt a little uncomfortable watching that because, again, that's one of the core traits about Batman is he will not kill. And,
It's one of those weird things because it's when I heard it before I went to the film, I was kind of like, well, what's going on? And then the car chase scene you were talking about, which, in terms of special effects, yeah, it was really good, but it felt like if you ever watched the first couple Tim Burton films, Batman actually has like a kind of a body count in those films. Only like one actual, I would call it straight up murder, when he drops dynamite in, I think, in a guy's pants and like throws him off screen and he explodes. I think it might have been Batman Returns. So to me, when I was thinking, I was like, oh, is it going to be the same thing like that? And it is and it isn't. Like there is sort of at first it seemed like it was going in that direction, and then it just takes it to that extreme. The idea that he doesn't necessarily care about bad guys and their lives to the point of going like all out with it. And you go, okay, this is probably not exactly a good representation of this character. You sort of have combined Dark Knight Returns, Tim Burton, but instead of bringing in the moral code of the characters, you're kind of making him more, dare I say, Punisher-esque,
Yeah.
Which is not the character. Punisher is the character for the reasons. That's not Batman.
We were talking before the show, and you brought up something that I hadn't even considered before, and that was the sort of what we kind of call behind the scenes the dark side clause, where Batman perceives a threat to be so great that he is willing to break that code to deal with that. So do you think that that's sort of in appliance here with him and Superman?
That's the thing with this. Like, I think this Batman was actually physically and mentally scared of Superman. Especially during the end of that chase scene where Superman's standing in the middle of the road. Like, Batman has a moment when it's very subtle acting where, like, his eyes go wide and looks like he's taking a deep breath, like you get scared. Like, it's very rare for Batman to show his fear. He has fears. He's a human being. He has fears, but he tries not to show them. So in this film, it felt like it let slip about being fearful about him, especially also towards the end when he's getting ready to battle Superman, and Superman calls him Bruce. He kind of takes like a quick step back about it, like, holy crap, you figured out who I was. Which wasn't, truth be told, isn't really hard, but, comic book plots, whatever. So, there is a little bit of that he might have gone to the extreme, or he was going that extreme anyway. Like, the speech he had with Alfred, or the Alfred speech beforehand, that the idea of good men going cruel, like, maybe when Superman started showing up, Batman started taking this weird dark path, and, like, we're seeing sort of the antithesis of that. But we don't get to see sort of the resolution of, oh my god, I have gone too far situation. Like, that would be the closing arc of a storyline like that. And we didn't see the beginning of that. So we sort of have to assume this is what Batman has always done. Well, at least in this universe.
We've seen hints at the beginning, because remember, there is that one shot of the Robin suit with the "ha-ha, jokes on you" spray painted on it, which I took that as a very clear indication that Tim Drake was a thing in this. Not Tim Drake. What's his name? Jason Todd was a Robin in this continuity.
There was, obviously there was a Robin, and obviously that Robin no longer exists. We don't know why. we assume that the Joker is involved, but we don't know for sure because we never really got that story, if you will. So we sort of have to assume that perhaps there has been things leading up to Batman going this darker path in this film, but it's too vague for us to say anything. And it was another thing, like other weird things he brought, because like I said, went back and forth. So when like he first goes into, there's a scene where he goes into the warehouse. You'll see it in the trailers when he's taking guys down. Doesn't fire a single shot, doesn't fire a gun or anything. Doesn't do anything. He actually disables all their guns. Like, so you see this Batman, you're like, it's Batman. Batman I know. Arkham City, kind of like fighting style, but has the little Batman animated series. He's taking the guns out before they can use them. But then later on, he helps and kills one of the bad guys off with another bad guy holding a machine gun. And you go, oh, you were close. Like, now I don't feel like something happened again. That dissonance just, happened once again. Where like you got one part right, but then you went to the extreme at the very end.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's talk about the other elephant in the room, and that's the villains. Before we go on to Lex Luthor, let me just say, Zod in this movie, Michael Shannon, easiest money he's ever made, hands down.
What do you need me to do? Well, I need you to look dead and not move. Done.
Easiest 20 mil ever.
But yeah, so what I find interesting with Lex, though, is Lex is the other casting people didn't like when he was first announced, of Jesse Eisenberg. I think I'm saying the name right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like the critics were right this time around. I was not really enthused with his performance as Lex Luthor. He didn't really act like Lex Luthor. He was acting something else entirely. I knew there was viral marketing going around saying, oh, this is Lex Jr., Alexander Luthor, which might make a little bit more sense, but since that was never brought up in the film, we can only assume this is, Lex Luthor.
Yeah. See, now I have I'm going to just put all my cards on the table. I have read very few Superman comics in my time, and I've had very little exposure to the Superman mythos directly. The only real exposures I've had were, of course, the Superman animated series and the Justice League cartoon, and a few odd comics here and there, and some of the animated films. And in all those continuities, the thing that struck me about Lex was he was always very calm, very cool, and he was always planning. You could always look at his in his eyes and see sort of the wheels turn. Like he was always 2 or 3 steps ahead, and he never really lost control. This Lex Luthor seemed to swing back and forth between a sociopathic loon and a petulant child. He did have some shining moments. The moment in the gallery where he's doing the Paul Revere thing. The red capes are coming, and he's drumming his fingers on the desk. That was a really cool moment. That was a really scary moment for him. But other than that, like I said, he was all over the place, and I couldn't really get a bead on not just his motivations, but just like is he a brat? Is he insane? What's going on here?
And again, that goes back to the plot and just the script work just being just way so vague, is that it feels like something's going on with him, right? It feels like something's happening, but we don't know what, and we're not really told or shown what, Maybe he was getting, because maybe the reason he was kind of getting, trying to get these two heroes to take each other out is because he had a bigger plan involved and they could stop him, so let's get him out of the way now. But what was that bigger plan? Doomsday? I don't know, Monster of the Week? I don't think that was the plan. And he was eccentric, He was like, play him as the most eccentric person you can possibly play him. And you don't feel anything towards him. And you're more, not embarrassed, but just confused, yeah, by what he's doing and saying and why he wants to say and do it. Obviously he wants to frame Superman for stuff, and he did it. He did it with the Senate, that Senate hearing scene. By the way, actually, it made me jump out of my chair a little bit. I was not expecting that to happen. If you don't know what's happening, he helps one of the characters that got injured from Man of Steel. That everyone thought he was supposed to be Metallo, and I was like, he's not going to be Metallo. and he gives him like a wheelchair. Says he needs, he's going to speak in front of this conference. That's, I'm guessing it's Superman conferences. Like, can we keep him in check and kind of stuff like that. It turns out Lex plants a bomb in it, and it goes off, and like it shocked me completely. Not in the sense, in both the sense of storyline because I didn't see it coming. It was actually a genuinely shocking moment, but also my theater was really loud, and so huge explosion and went, Jesus Christ.
And you'd made the mistake of sitting next to the speaker.
No, that's the thing. I wasn't next to the speaker that time. There's times that has happened, but not that time. But it was just a moment where I was like, oh God. Yeah.
But like I said, it's just he felt like a petulant kid throughout most of the film, and not the devious super genius that I remember him being.
Yeah, and it felt like I don't mind him being, if they want to go the mad scientist route, I don't mind it because Lex has been a mad, quote quote, mad scientist before, but they just sort of went way too eccentric with him, and it just didn't bring a lot to the character in itself, and that sucks, because it's, but whatever, we kind of move on. We didn't really care. We only cared about Batman and Superman, I guess. And
the other newcomer, Wonder Woman, who was played by Gal Gadot in this film, and although she didn't really get a whole lot of screen time, she definitely stole the show in the third act.
Yeah, she did. I actually sort of enjoyed her work. Again, she was, I wouldn't call it like the Black Widow from Iron Man 2, because Scarlett Johansson was in the film for a while, but it definitely had the same thing of like, I'm going to introduce this character, and she's going to be really important later on. She has her own movie coming out next year, wink and nudge. But I liked what she did. I wished I knew more about the story she was going through, because the plot was she was there to get a picture of her that was taken back in 1918. We don't know why she wanted the picture. I'm assuming she wanted the picture because she may have built a life, and that was going to possibly blackmail her into revealing, hey, I've been around for a long time, and start asking really important questions that maybe she doesn't want to answer at the time. But I think every scene she was in, she was one of the most interesting characters in there, and I'm glad she kept her accent, because she's from Israel, maybe, I think something like that.
The actress is from Israel, but
yeah.
Wonder Woman herself is from Greece.
Well, she's from Paradise Island or Themyscira. But she kept that, by keeping her accent, because she's been. I've seen her in the Fast and Furious movies, and she tries to Americanize herself in those movies. But it sounded like she kept a real accent, which is actually kind of neat. I didn't expect that, but I sort of appreciate it because a lot of people forget that Wonder Woman is not from the USA or anything like that. She's from a different country, so she might have a slight accent. So I appreciated that. It's the little things in life you have to appreciate.
Okay, so that's all the newcomers. So let's talk about some of the returning cast members. I know that you were pretty excited about Perry White.
Oh my God! So Lawrence Fishburne can be Perry White forever. I don't care if they reboot this film in 2 years. You bring him back as Perry. He's been the best Perry White I've ever seen. Like, everything about him, it was great. There's actually two moments I really liked him. Was when he's talking to Clark, and Clark is sort of talking about Batman being out of control, or what Clark thinks Batman is being out of control. And he just looks at Clark going, crime wave in Gotham. Subtext, water is wet. I was like, that's like the best reaction to anything about Gotham, especially like a crime or anything can happen in Gotham. The other great moment I think was he's yelling at Kent. He's like, Kent, and he's not at the desk. He's off being Superman. He goes, where does he go? Like, just like I like the idea of like this has happened a couple times, so he's just frustrated with it at this point. Like I could fire him, but he sometimes does good work. Where does he go?
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White was a big surprise. One of the other newcomers that I forgot to bring up, Jeremy Irons as Alfred.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved his performance, and I love that he did something different with Alfred that I've never seen done on screen before, which is like he won't take any of Batman's shit. Like all the Alfreds that we've seen on screen before, Michael Caine, the I can't remember his name, the guy who did it for the animated series and the Batman. They're all very kind of the gentleman's gentleman, the servile butler. This Alfred just doesn't give a fuck. He's like, don't you get uppity with me, young man. I used to change your diapers.
Yeah, he also, I think, should have been way more the voice of reason in the movie. Like, there was that moment when he figures out Batman was actually not going after necessarily a mobster, but something else entirely. And then when he had that line of, like, we have to make sure, I have to destroy him if he goes bad or anything like that. And Jeremy Irons just looks and goes, he's not your enemy. You're starting a war you can't win. Just, not because, it's... Because Superman at that time had no weaknesses in terms of knowledge. They think he might have something with kryptonite. They don't really know. But, like, he's just going, like, this is a bad decision. You're going down a terrible route. I wish they kind of pushed that more into the film.
Now, a character that I was sort of disappointed with was Lois Lane, who I felt like she just kind of got in the way a lot.
She didn't have anything to... Outside of the first scene, she didn't have anything to do. And really, I felt like they just threw a subplot with her just to have her, just to eventually get her to the right places to get some lines in, and just because she didn't really need to be there for most of the film. I'm not saying I should think they should shaft Lois. No, Lois is a great character, but don't just have her be like a plot device or something,
So we've got about 20 minutes left here, so let's move on from the cast and talk about cinematography and presentation. And I gotta say, there were some really neat touches with the camera work in this film. The one that stands out the most to me is the scene where it flashes back to Thomas and Martha Wayne's murder, and the gunman has the gun pressed against Martha Wayne's head, and her pearl necklace is wrapped around the slide of the gun, and it breaks when the gun goes off. That's straight out of Dark Knight Returns. And I absolutely loved that they did that. And I'm wondering how many other shots like that were in the film that I didn't see because I'm not all that familiar with the comics material.
Possibly during the final battle, because the final battle is definitely set up similar, not exactly like the Dark Knight Returns fight. Because he has the big armor on him, and they're going blow for blow at one point. There's some things that don't make it in, and... there's a lot of different stuff, and I'm one of the few people who actually sort of enjoyed the final battle between Doomsday and the Trinity, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, because I understand people don't like the color palette of the film. That makes sense to me. It's too dark. I understand people may not like certain aspects of like their costumes. Makes perfect sense. It is a departure from a lot of stuff they usually had in the past. But in terms of actually action work, I really did enjoy it. I know someone was like, well, it looks like a cartoon. It looks campy. It doesn't look right. And I'm like, you mean kind of looks like a comic book? Like that's...
See, when Doomsday first appeared, the thing that kept running through my head was Sean Bean in Fellowship of the Ring. They have a cave troll.
Yeah, and I was wondering exactly where they were going to go with it. But as the film went on, because the way Doomsday works is that when he gets, not necessarily hurt, but the bones that you see on him... Like, they got there, they had to grow there from being, I guess, beat up. So he didn't start out looking like that, but he eventually looked like that. And in the film, they were trying to portray that. Because every time he got a certain amount of energy, he had a discharge, and then the bones were growing on him. So I understand, like, the original aspect where you saw him in the trailer. People were like, he looks like a cave troll, or he looks like Abomination. But he was eventually working his way to becoming the Doomsday, and then got stabbed in the chest with a kryptonite spear. Really, that's how that happens. It's a spoiler.
Okay.
But he gets some revenge because he stabs Superman in the heart, and spoiler, Superman dies, but he's not really dead because there's a Justice League movie coming out.
Now, I kind of want to go back to talk about how disjointed the film feels, and I mentioned that there were some things that could have been cut, and one of the things that I felt could have been trimmed back was there are just way too many damn dream sequences in this film.
There were.
and it's like, you know, it felt like anytime the movie got a good pace going and a good you know, storyline going, it would suddenly make this left turn into a dream sequence that comes completely out of nowhere. Like, 1 second we're following Bruce Wayne at a party at Lex Luthor's place, and the next suddenly we're in this like post-apocalyptic, you know, Fallout future where Batman's leading a militia, Superman's apparently become Hitler. And there's some kind of alien invasion going on at the same time, and this is something I want to ask you about. Someone said that the flying alien creatures that show up at the end of that dream sequences are Darkseid's foot soldiers. Is that true?
Yes, they are parademons. It's a very quick shot after he does the fight in the sand, as they're flying in and grabbing people. Right before he goes unconscious, one of the parademons comes up behind him to do it, and you get like a few frames, a clear shot of what they look like. And if I wish I had a frame picture for it, I'm not sure if people have it on the internet yet. Of course they do. It's the internet. But like, you could see him, and you probably could make a comparison. It's like, oh, that's a parademon. Now, being a guy who's read Superman and comic books, and I saw that, I was like, oh, parademon. You know, like, I kind of got a little excited. But there were a lot of dream sequences and a lot of sort of like weird dreamy moments. I think we did a count, right? It was like 6, 5, 4?
It was 5, possibly 6 if we count the Flash coming in from the future sequence.
Right, because we weren't sure, because that one's like, is that a premonition? Is that, you know, is he actually there? Weren't really sure. And yeah, and that's why I called this film, it feels like you're getting a dream. Because not only are you getting a dream, you got dreams within a dream. And it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, you probably could cut those or shorten them or anything like that. You might have also been able to cut the big Iron Man 2 / Age of Ultron email scene where Batman sends the picture, the Wonder Woman, it's like, who are you? And there's the film could have stopped and went, coming soon to a theater near you, The Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Cyborg. Wink. Like, that's what that scene felt like to me. And I criticized Age of Ultron for doing that, where like the movie stops to preview shit that's going to happen in the future. Same thing happens here, but maybe to a little bit more obvious attempt.
And that's kind of what really contributes to the film feeling so disjointed, is it feels like it's trying to do too much at once. In addition to trying to tell its own story, it's also trying to set up all these dominoes for future movies. Whereas, you know, I hate to make the comparison with the Marvel films, but the Marvel films did the exact opposite. You had each film telling its own story and then setting up one little domino, and then along comes Avengers kicking them all over. This movie is just like, okay, got to put down all the stuff, got to set up this, got to set up Cyborg, got to set up the Flash, got to set up Aquaman, got to set up Wonder Woman, got to set up possibly Darkseid, got to set up all this stuff. And the you know, we're all over here in the audience going, excuse me, we're still here. Can we have a story too?
They're like, eventually. I was like, oh, what does that mean? Wait, we not have one now? Oh dear, I do not want to see the internet after this.
Yeah. So it felt like the film was just trying to do too much at once. I feel like if they cut a lot of that setup and just let the film story stand on its own, it might not have been excellent, but it would have been better than it was, I feel.
There is something, I know a lot of people going like, well, this feels rushed, they're trying to catch up, and then they are. They're not the only ones too, for God's sakes. Everyone's trying to catch up to Marvel now. Everyone's trying to make their own cinematic universe now. Like, that's a thing that can happen. So it's just one of those things, and like, I wouldn't have minded as much, because I know, you know, obviously we're going to have, you know, Batman, Superman first. And there might not be confidence in these other characters, which is sad, because I'm actually looking forward for the Aquaman movie, because I am an Aquaman fan, and I kind of like the actor they got for him. Yes, he's not the traditional blonde hair Aquaman, but that doesn't matter. I always want to see what they can do next, and I do, and that's the thing I like. They're trying to do. They are trying to be different, but it's a different extreme, you know. And I will admit they're trying to break from the as doom and gloom stuff every so often. And there was a few jokes in this film. They didn't all work. Some did. But so there is this, you know, someone's at least in the back of the room saying, at least have someone say something kind of funny every so often. You know, not necessarily the quipping that we have in Marvel Universe yet, but at least someone says something kind of funny.
See,
not always working, though.
See, I feel the exact opposite. I found this film to be very cynical and very negative in general as to its outlook, and I didn't particularly care for that. And now you mentioned that as we were talking before the show, you mentioned that this sort of cynicism kind of contributes a bit to the divide between the critics and the fans.
Yeah, so this is something that's actually sort of bothered me greatly with the criticism of the movie, and it's actually been in my head since I left the draft house. # not an ad. Something just didn't feel right that this was another film that had to be the film that launched 1,000 think pieces, or even labeling it the worst thing ever. I understand there's always an opinion, and I've had to defend a lot of movies that people thought were complete, utter shit, that I happen to really enjoy. And even on this show, we have discussed some terrible films. Off the top of my head, the movies that we have discussed on this show that I actually think are worse than this one is Battleship, Kick-Ass 2, Pixels, the new Fantastic Four.
Excuse me, when did you go see Pixels? Because as I recall, I had to suffer through that stink burger alone, motherfucker.
Well, at work, someone had got it on their phone, I guess through Amazon or something, and they're like, hey, look at this. I'm like, oh, what's this? It's Pixels. Oh. I'm going to leave now. So I left the break room in silence. So yeah, I didn't see all of it. I only saw a couple scenes, and I kind of figured I know what Gonzo was talking about now. But I don't know. I kept asking why people were so hell-bent to take this film on. And I kind of thought about it a little bit more. I probably lost a lot of sleep on it. So I had to kind of go and look at the characters themselves of Batman and Superman. What they mean to people, what they mean to our world. So, you have to look to Superman first, and you got to go back to our Man of Steel / Superman discussion, how I feel and how I feel like who Superman is, or what he's at least become, because he is in fact an icon now. He's more than just a character in a book. He's supposed to be the reflection of what's best, of the best people in the world, what we should strive to be in the world. And sort of I got stuck on that word reflection. He's a reflection of what's supposed to be the best. And at the time, the best has always sort of evolved and changed. This Max Fleischer shorts, they were, more adventure style, fighting mad scientists, but he was then also fighting the Japanese because he was taken apart, because it was made during World War II, and we sort of forget that. He had propaganda pieces. We sort of look back on it now going, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that, but you can't just take it away. It's history. It's there. It happened. And you kind of look at the first set of Superman movies with Christopher Reeves, and, Americana was kind of running wild. He was saving the day with a wink and a nod, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. But he was really fighting, Lex most of those movies. He fought Zod and company once, and he fought Nuclear Man a little bit later on, but there was always just a bit more down to earth. It wasn't full comic book yet. Then you have Superman Returns, with the keyword in there, returns. And it was during the time we were trying to, I guess, return to those roots. 80s nostalgia was running around for a while, and we wanted to go back to this great feeling, but, it didn't quite work out with the modern audiences. The modern audience was expecting something new. And so you're kind of forced to look around at the world now, and the world just seems darker than it was. People seem harsh, mean, and less caring. Verbal fights break out around social issues, political issues. Yes, I used the P word. Attacks and harassment almost seem commonplace in the world. Tabloid reporting is taking place of journalism and clickbait, And I think, in a way, Superman almost sort of reflects this as well. He is cynical. He's waffling. He doesn't know what good is anymore. We might not know what technically good is anymore.
So do you think maybe that the sort of back and forth between Superman and Batman in this film is kind of a reflection of this sort of outrage culture that we've fostered, where everybody's got a side and it doesn't matter what what the discussion is. We don't even want a discussion or debate. We just want to be right no matter what.
There is a little bit of that, and this might be more subconscious. I don't think this is what the film was trying to say, because look at Batman. Batman doesn't, in this film, you know, when you think about Batman, you think about the former Batmans, you think about justice, you know. He was wronged. His parents were murdered in front of him, and he wants to make a world where that doesn't happen anymore. But he's sort of willing to use fear and intimidation to get to that point, which, you know, almost nowadays seems like a taboo. And here in this one, you know, he's going out to the complete extreme, and he doesn't want to have a discussion. He doesn't want to talk about it. I am right. I have to destroy him. I have to take him on. And at the end scene, what's weird is that the films make it seem like these guys just hate each other and want to fight. The end scene fight begins with Superman going, "Look, I was wrong. Some bad stuff is happening. I didn't realize what I was doing. We gotta stop this." And Batman's like, "No, fuck you. I have to be right. I have to get rid of you." Like, he doesn't even want to hear what Superman has to say. And only does it when he invokes, both Superman invokes his mother and, ironically, Batman's mother's name, Martha, towards the end of the fight, that he kind of freaks out a bit. You know, he's like, "Why did you say that?" Very weird way to end the fight. I'm not gonna say like, "Oh, that was a great scene." It was more like, "Oh, that's how they're gonna end it? Oh, okay." Doomsday. All right, okay, we're at Doomsday now. But like that's I think this film and the characters turned a mirror to people, and they got disgusted by what they saw. They got disgusted by kind of what the world is being turned into, or at least what our world has turned these characters into. But at the same time, I don't think they got that point. Like, so they're disgusted. Like, well, what can we do? Let's go after the writers. Let's go after the directors. Let us blame them for this abomination. But it's like, but what about us? You know, maybe we should try to be better. Maybe we should, instead of, you know, go back to the journalism stuff. Maybe instead of telling us how terrible we are, how terrible the world is, we find those little nuggets of hope and joy and go, by the way, there's still some good out here. Like, I feel like this, again, this is all subconscious. This doesn't make the movie any better. I don't know if it makes it any worse. The quality is what it is, but it was just something I couldn't get out of my head for a long period of time. I have no idea if this makes any sense whatsoever.
Oh, no, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. So, but we're kind of running a bit out of time here, so let's start closing things up by giving our final general thoughts on the film. So, Brian, why don't you go first?
I think I am the only person in the world that is actually in the middle. Like, I like some things, and I didn't like some things. And there's just enough of like and dislike that I'm just in the middle and went, well, it happened. There it is. We did it. This is the first time, you know, these two characters are on the film. Could have been done better? Yes. But, you know, it happened. It's there. It's at our feet.
Okay. For me, like I said, I was kind of disappointed with the film overall. It felt very disjointed, very rushed. Felt like it was trying to do too many things at once. Certainly not the worst film I've ever seen, but it definitely could have been... There was definitely a lot of room for improvement. So, yeah. And so with that, this is the part of the show where we give our final ratings on the film. As always, our rating scale from best to worst is see it now, wait for matinee, wait for DVD, wait for cable, don't even bother, and Brian's rating, fuck this movie. So, Brian, what is your final score for this film?
I think I might disappoint people. I think a lot of people thought I was going to use my rating for this film. Sorry, guys, not this time. This is definitely not Kick-Ass 2. But at the same time, I know a lot of people probably are still curious about the film. I know the negative reviews and negative reactions might have put them off. So even if you're a little bit curious, it's going to have to wait for cable. You're going to have to wait for either, you know, free on TV, or hell, even cable's slowly dying. So maybe free on Amazon Prime, or however they want to do it in the future. But it's not I can't justify anyone buying a ticket.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I said, it's not the worst film I've ever seen, but it's not all that great either. So I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna say wait for cable. So if you you know, you can get away with not seeing this movie immediately, and you know, I'm sure it'll be out on DVD and Amazon Prime and on demand before Suicide Squad comes out in August. So you can get away with waiting. So, and with that, that's about all the time we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
And I'm Brian.
All right, we'll see you next week. Talk up, play us out.